Semyon lay on the bed, glued to his phone, scrolling through the news feed. It was already late, and he decided to stop the meaningless scrolling and fall into blissful sleep, especially since he had the day off tomorrow. Placing his phone on the nightstand, he closed his eyes and contentedly collapsed into bed. Thoughts about future events began swirling in his head: a trip to the countryside to visit his parents, a visit to the service center for passport renewal, and much more. However, Semyon pushed these thoughts aside, deciding that these matters weren't significant problems. Afterward, he shifted his thoughts to his significant other, recalling moments from their meeting today, chastising himself for his behavior. He also remembered a childhood incident. After about half an hour of rummaging through his memories, Semyon decided it was necessary to stop and firmly resolve to clear his mind of any thoughts. He stretched, assumed a more comfortable sleeping position, and prepared to embark on a second journey into the realm of dreams. He couldn't completely rid his mind of the intrusive thoughts, but they began to feel blurry, indicating that Semyon was on the verge of falling asleep. However, at one moment, his heart started pounding furiously. Then he realized that sleep had completely dispersed. Tossing and turning, Semyon became deeply frustrated. He had heard that coughing vigorously could help with tachycardia. He tried this method, and it did work, albeit briefly. 3 hours into Semyon's desperate struggle for sleep, in addition to tachycardia, an incessant ticking from the wall clock became an aggravating factor. Semyon was almost losing his composure when he remembered that the wall clock hadn't been working for 3 months due to a dead battery. Initially slightly alarmed, he quickly came up with a not entirely rational explanation. Maybe something got stuck in them. I'll have to check tomorrow. 10 minutes later, he heard a loud cough echoing throughout the apartment. This frightened him more than the clock's ticking, but he quickly found an explanation. The soundproofing is terrible. The neighbor is coughing now. Despite rationalizing what was happening around him, his heart started pounding even harder. Semyon concluded that he was unlikely to fall asleep and reached for the phone that had been lying on the nightstand the whole time. As he groped for the phone, Semyon accidentally knocked it off the nightstand, and it crashed loudly onto the floor. He cursed and reached out to grab the fallen phone. However, he couldn't find it by touch alone, so Semyon decided to turn on the room light. He got out of bed, pressed the switch, but the light didn't come on. Semyon was already on the verge of panic but quickly realized that the light had probably been turned off. He promptly flopped back onto the bed, pulling the covers over himself. The sound of the wall clock ceased. The phone on the floor began vibrating. Semyon didn't feel like getting out of bed. His heart started pounding even harder, but he decided to wait until the phone stopped ringing. After some time, the phone fell silent. The ticking of the wall clock didn't resume, nor did the neighbor's loud coughing. Pre-sleep state returned to Semyon, and he almost convinced himself that everything that had happened was just a result of a ridiculous coincidence. With this thought, he fell asleep. Waking up sometime after noon, Semyon picked up the phone that had fallen during the night and saw a missed call from an unknown number. His first thought was to call back, as curiosity overwhelmed him despite the fear he had experienced. However, Semyon decided it would be better to forget about the whole story. Maybe just take a look at the clock. Semyon went to the kitchen, took down the wall clock, and placed it on the couch to remove the battery. As soon as he opened the cover, his vision blurred, and he collapsed, losing consciousness. Semyon woke up in the middle of the night. In his bed, the phone on the floor was vibrating. His heart was pounding fiercely. Overcoming his fear, Semyon decided to pick up the phone and answer the unknown number. "Under no circumstances touch the clocks," said a mechanical voice on the other end of the line. However, it was already too late. Semyon's eyes closed. His heart was ready to burst from his chest. The next day, Semyon's relatives became alarmed. When they arrived at his apartment, they found him dead. Semyon was lying on his back, his eyes staring at a point on the ceiling. From the kitchen, The ticking of the wall clock could be heard.